Good day, strategy gamers, and welcome back to episode 19 of our Let's Play series, War in the East 2, Stalingrad to Berlin campaign. In this episode, we're going to be finishing up the ground movement phase of turn 10. We're also going to take another look at info screens and a revisit on a couple of things from our supply and logistics discussion from the last two episodes. And then we're going to end the turn and wrap up the episode as we see what the Germans do to try to counterattack and respond to our movements. In the last episode, we left off around the Orel front and made the decision to actually bring in from our reserve theater box an additional 7 infantry divisions to effectively try to form about 2 armies worth of units that can help sweep in and surround Orel. So we can lay siege to the fortified city. We're now going to continue on down the line to see where we have other opportunities to continue our advance and to put pressure on the German forces. Looking here, I think we might take a look and see if we can't have any success against these units. We take both of these, that's 13 to 2. I don't know that we would move this to any other hex to try anywhere else. So I think we might go ahead and press through here. Go ahead and attack. And they retreated. So another successful attack. I think what we might do then is actually take the tank corps can make it through there. This fatigue isn't that bad, so I'm thinking we might move it up. Let's do that. Then we're actually going to attack this unit again. Nope, don't have enough to do it. That's fine. But we will take this. No, that's going to exhaust the. So maybe over here. Not sure that we're going to have enough to make it all the way there. What if we take one of no? We just don't have enough points. I thought we would have to try to push through. So this 11th Tank Corps is now a little vulnerable sitting there. But I think we might leave them as is. They only have a defensive value 2, 3. They're kind of surrounded by 9, 8. An answer here. It might be less costly to actually just move it out. There's an undo button. Need one. Yeah, we're going to move it out. And this is actually part of the 48th Army, so it looks like it got a little far down the line. Because it's HQ units up there. So you can see the effects we had by moving that unit to 0 movement points. It was at 26 fatigue, now it's 77. So let's just pretend that I did that to try to demonstrate a point of how that mechanic works. Never move your units to 0 unless you absolutely have to. But I did that because I would rather have a highly fatigued unit than to have 7,000 men and 100 armored fighting vehicles sitting surrounded by themselves. I had moved them in there thinking that we could probably get at least 1 or 2 infantry divisions allocated to help reinforce that hex. Without that option, it's not worth taking losses on that unit. But now they're in a much more secure position in this hex with fortification level of 3 and the 143rd Rifle Division to kind of help with the defenses. So there's probably not a threat to that unit any longer. Continuing down, we have 2 hexes here that we might be able to push on. We've got a pretty strong stack here. The question is, which is going to be more important to go against? I kind of like the idea of attacking this unit here with these 2 Waffen Field divisions. So I actually think we're going to do that. And it's 11 to 3. It's not great. What if we move this rifle division up? Now we attack. It's 16 to 3, so let's do that. So they both retreated. So that was a success. Don't think we're going to have enough movement to get into that hex, which is okay. Have these two rifle brigades that I actually think we're going to move up there. So now we're starting to put pressure here on this town. It actually looks like there's this HQ unit. I'm kind of tempted to say, let's attack. And we are successful. We took the depot and pushed back the HQ unit. So that seems like that went quite well. And they don't really have a unit or a force that's going to be able to counterattack our advance into that hex. So I think that went quite well. This 4th tank guard or doesn't quite have enough to be effective and make their way over there. Probably have 2 to 1 if we were to attack here. Is there a better option for us though? I worry a little bit because this 14th motorized division is really at full strength, it seems, or pretty close to it at least. So I'm hesitant to be too aggressive given that situation. You look at what we have here, I mean, we have a defensive combat value of 30 right now in this hex, so it's certainly more than enough to defend against what they have. I wonder though if it doesn't make sense to maybe reposition some of these over to continue our breakout here, then causing them to refocus their priorities on this side of the front. I think we might do so. So now the question is, which do we move over? We have this unit, which is part of the 60th Army. And that HQ's over here, so it probably doesn't make too much sense to move that over. But the 4th Tank Guards Corps, I think, probably makes some sense to take. And actually, I do wonder, we move here. Can you... Yeah, not quite enough. But now they can help with this attack in the next turn. And so often this is about planning for the next turn. And then I think we're going to take this rifle division. You see it's attached to that HQ unit too. Let's move it over and we're going to transfer it. So now it belongs to the 38th Army. So now this entire stack is the 38th Army. We might as well just wait another turn here instead of pushing the unit too far. So I'm going to be curious to see how the AI responds to this, because now it should be able to detect that we might be breaking through in this sector of the line and over here, which hypothetically may lead them then to pull a retreat here, especially since we've pushed back their HQ unit. I don't know that it's going to affect anything here, because it should recognize that it has very good position along these lines. Just wonder if we don't need to maybe move this unit back, given the strength of what they have there. All in all, I feel a little overextended along this line here. But I also don't want to interrupt the work that it looks like these railroad construction units are doing. So I think what we might do is move this unit into this hex. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to do another shuffle. We move you over, we move you over. Okay. There we go. Probably could have taken some of these. I didn't even think about that. So yes, let's see here. We're going to move up the 305th here. We're going to move the 303rd here. We're just going to leave a rifle brigade on this rail construction unit. And then this rifle division. I do wonder Makes sense to put them here, stretching the line a little. Yeah, I think we're going to put them right there. Right. So the fatigue on some of these, well, maybe it was just that one. Yeah, it was just this one that had the high fatigue, 43. Here we have one with 57, so just have to watch on a few of these, right, to make sure we're not getting a little too crazy. And we're actually going to say, okay, where's depot? Let's put this on the depot. Get this guy on the depot. Really, we should always be doing this. Get that HQ unit to the depot. Are we still in range if we move there? Yeah, so that's better. Oh, but actually, we're probably getting supplied from right here. Okay, I wanted to do this at the end of the episode, but I think I'm just going to show you now. And that is, we talked about depots, the rail lines, roads, how trucks will go the distance from the depot to the unit that needs resupply. All of this stuff we covered 2 episodes ago, right? There's one more piece that I wanted to show you, and I'm going to turn off our weather overlay because it's a little easier to see when we do that. Show the icons was weather again. Here it is. Took me a minute. Okay, so weather map's off. Now I searched for a while trying to find if there's an icon for this, and I didn't see one. There is an undo button. Well, that feels a little bit like cheating now, doesn't it? We're going to say house rule, we don't use the undo button, but I can understand why they might have it in there. Anyways, I saw a shiny, I got distracted. This feature I'm about to show, I haven't been able to find the icon that represents it, but I did find the keyboard shortcut that pulls it up. And to look at this map view that we're about to turn on, you have to hit 8, the number 8 on your keyboard. And now we see all of these lines showed up on our map. Here's what the lines mean. A white line from point A to point B indicates that that is where that depot receives supply from. Right? So you can see where this depot is getting its supply from, where this depot is, etc., etc. So then you can kind of tell where's the origin of the supplies, right? But then you see these red lines. And a red line indicates where that unit was supplied from. So I moved these here to try to help with the supply situation from this depot to reinforce the front, but really, they're being supplied from this depot. All of these units, right, have that red arrow going to this depot. So I think what we're going to do then is actually move the HQ units onto this depot. There we go. Now this has also caught my eye because it looks like there's a number maybe aren't being supplied, or maybe those are the HQ units running back to Stavka or something like that. Like this line right here. It's a little interesting to me. We're going to follow this all the way down if we can. So it goes through there, and ends up here. Wonder if it has something to do with the artillery division and maybe like the ammunition it needs or something. Can't think of why else it'd be pulling supply from a depot so far away. But anyways, this really helps visualize where your unit's being resupplied from. And again, I was going to do this at the end of the episode, but because it came up here as we were moving those HQ units, it felt a little natural to talk about it now. So let's also maybe take this HQ unit, move it back here, right, to help with the supply from this depot, because that's what's supplying so much of this front. Where you can really see this exemplified is here where we move past Stalingrad. This really helps visualize how far these units have to go with trucks to get resupplied. Look at this. This is a huge distance. And when we look down in our caucus front, it's even larger, right? So as we discussed last time, 2 episodes ago, excuse me, a unit will search for supply from a depot up to 30 hexes away, right? So it will send trucks up to 30 hexes away. And remember, each hex is 10 miles. So that means that they're sending trucks in one way, one direction, 300 miles for, say, ammunition, and then driving 300 miles back if it was at the maximum range. So that can really cause some serious supply issues, and I'm pretty convinced that this has been one of the causes of our pain points in terms of the number of units that are on low supply. So now that I've gotten thoroughly distracted, we're going to take off that map mode by pressing the number 8 key. Although, geez, I just keep seeing opportunity after opportunity. I have not micromanaged our HQ units perhaps as well as I should have. But let's continue here down along on the front. And I think we left off... Where did we leave off? So right here, I think. Yes, right here is where we left off. So we're going to keep looking here. I think there's some obvious opportunity here to probably push through. And I have a lot less concern about these units right being in supply. So I think we might take... Although, as I say that, we see that a lot of these right here don't have great supply. So I think what we're going to do is take like this rifle division. Oh my, it's going to take all of its movement points to move there. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is because of zone of control, right? Because this unit is projecting zone of control, this unit is projecting zone of control. This is very well done by the German AI. What they've effectively done is they left behind these two Italian divisions, which frankly has some historical accuracies hidden behind that. They left them behind to hold this line, preventing us from in one turn being able to sweep into these two cities, because it would cost us too many movement points to cross through that zone of control. So I think we're going to be left with no other choice but to actually beat back these units that they've left behind. And this is 2-1, but it should be a success. I say these things, and then of course the exact opposite happens every time. You would think that I would learn by now. This one surely will be okay though. And as I say that, the Romanian division helps in its defense. So looks like it got help from this armored division. So a lot of excitement going into the turn about this. Ending the turn with these units having made absolutely no progress. What we can probably do though is move up these two to this hex. Are these all still in supply? It looks like they are. However, it looks like, so this is the 6th Army. Looks like we have a member of the 6th Army, this tank corps that came down here. This is feeling a little bit like deja vu, and I'm trying to remember why. And here we've actually established a depot. And I think it would be very useful to us. There's no rail line going there, though. This might have been this was a depot that we captured. I think that's what is happening here. Yeah, so it used 104 trucks to bring in 283 tons of freight. Okay. Let's take off all those overlays here momentarily. But we might just reassign this tank corps. No, we're going to bring it back up. And we're going to say, can we attack again? They retreated this time. Okay. So this, I think, at least opens it up a little better for us next turn. The difficulty now is look at the fatigue level on some of those units. 93. Oh, I should have looked at that before thinking about what we were going to do here. So all right, audience, please remind me. This chunk of units, the entire 6th Army, cannot advance next turn. They need a break. They absolutely need a break. What we're going to do is go down now to our 3rd Guards Army, which is really kind of stretched quite a bit on the front line here. And I think we're going to take... Maybe we will just leave those as they are. That lets them build up their combat prep and lower their fatigue a little bit, so I think we might leave that exactly as they are. But what we could do is take this 1st motorized, bring them over here. turn off that supply icon. So I think the question is, where do we beat them back with these forces that we have? And I think it would probably behoove us not to start thinking long term about connecting these hexes on this rail line to our rail network, right? To get an additional line of supply going down to reinforce these units around Stalingrad front. So, interesting. Yeah, looking at the situation, it does make sense, I think, for us to attack here and press. The only temptation I have is we have all of these units kind of surrounding the hex that are all so low in defensive value that it makes me wonder if it's not worth just pushing them back to maintain a bit of a perimeter. So what if we just took this one hex, and what if they were the only ones attacking? So you see, it's not quite enough. I think we're going to move up these two rifle divisions. We had gone back and forth on whether or not we'd do that, but I think we will move them up here to the front. And now if we take this, that's 30 to 12. Let's go ahead and press that. So they've retreated, which is good. It was mixed forces. It looked like Hungarian and Italian, I think. So that probably helped our cause a little. Oh, yeah, I don't know that we want to move in there if it's going to exhaust our movement points. And the defensive value of some of these units is actually pretty good, so never mind. Yeah, so let's take these two guards units and move them up here. That's fine. And now we have this unit to continue to play with a little, and you see that this is why recon is important, audience. We had looked and we saw, oh, well, there's a unit here that only has combat value of 2 in defense. In actuality, there was also a Hungarian light division, which brings their defensive combat value up to, it says 8, but really I think it should be 9 reading the tooltip. So now if we attacked that, it is 2 to 1. But maybe something over here is a better option. I think we might go after these 2 infantry divisions. Because these seem to have some type of supply concern, which I think decreases the likelihood of a counterattack from them. So I think we're going to hit out here. And they both retreated. Okay. Do we have enough to do another? Not effectively. So we're going to leave that be. So we have made some great progress here. I just wish I'd known about the fatigue state of these units, though. Because that's going to become problematic. But if we can wait 2 or 3 turns on these and just have this entire army push and put pressure on these rail lines, that might really open it up for a better supply situation for us. So that's encouraging. We do need to think about long term, right? How hard is it going to be for these guys to get resupplied? And it looks like in the past turns they were getting resupplied from this depot up here, which isn't too bad, I guess. This is mostly clear terrain, so that's good. All right, continuing down the line, we got this pocket, and I think it makes a lot of sense as these guys start to get in a little bit better resupply to maybe push. Let's see the status of this army. This is still the 3rd Guards, actually. Some of these units are at 50 fatigue, so I don't think it would hurt if we waited on any type of attack. So this is these 2 infantry divisions. If we take these 3 units, the math is, say, 4 to 11, almost 3 to 1. We take this here, it's 12 to 1.5. I think for sure we're going to push back that security force. They routed. Okay, so that helps us out quite a bit. And it actually looks like the Germans might be using air support right now, which I find a little interesting. Although we have been, as you, the viewer, know, very, very cautious about our use of air support. I think I'm going to take this 1st Guards unit and I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to have it included in this attack, just to ensure victory. Right, so we rout at the one and retreat at the other. I think that was important, just so that way we don't have... We need to try to keep reducing the number of close attacks, right, that don't have those overwhelming odds. Here, do we maybe move up this tank core? I think that makes sense. I think we're going to use these units here to keep pressure. So we're going to go ahead and attack that. They retreat it. They're taking some heavy losses here with some of these. So this is good. Now if we press you up, don't know what's there, which is concerning, but I think we're going to try to just shatter that unit. Nope, they retreated. Okay. But now we're actually going to retreat. Okay. So their fatigue's worked up, so I want them off the front line, right? So we're going to actually bring them back even one more. That's good. This entire pocket we're going to hold just as we are. And I think we will... Debating if these we don't move up just a little bit. Well, we can. I think we will. I'll end up regretting this, but we're going to move them up a little. Rifle division. Bring you up. The HQ unit. Okay. This pocket we're probably going to keep just as it is. All of this we're going to keep as is, I think. Now, to Stalingrad proper. This is the interesting one, right? So we see that again, they have some severe issues with supply starting to kick in, which is good. And I think we need to start looking at... First, let's do this first. Let's get the right units here into that hex. So we're going to take that tank core. And let's take this. Oh no, I moved it to exhaustion. No. Boy, that undo button is tempting. House rule though. We're going to move up that tank core. Okay. Now I think we're going to take these units here. We're going to try to finally break through in this hex. And we did. And they surrendered. So that's 35,000 men that surrendered. Victory, victory, victory. So that rifle corps we're going to move up. Which other units do we want to move up? I think we'll also take... Some of these really are not a good situation. Makes sense to bring them around. Actually, I'm going to bring them up here. Alright, so units that have enough movement to do so are going to move here. Those rifle divisions, that works. Okay, now, where next? I think next might be right here. So we take all of these. It's not enough. Okay. What about here? Nope. So that's the actual city proper. What if we take all of you? 22 to 39. Nope, not good enough. Boy, I really didn't want to. We might have to wait though. We might have to wait. Don't know that there's going to be another option here for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure each hex has a clear stack of 3 ready. Ready and waiting for the next turn. All right. Yeah. Okay. They are down to 5 hexes. Those defensive values are just insane. 3, 1, 3, 4, 4. So really this has to be the next point in which we break through. Just if we had everything thrown at it, it's not even 1-to-1. So we can't. Okay. But their supply situation is not going to get better. That is the encouraging news, right? That is the encouraging news. Wonder if there's not a better unit here. So we're going to take you, the 214th, off the line. And we're going to move in this 50th Guards, where we have units that are in good condition, low fatigue, etc. I want to move those up. Here we have 2 possibilities. I think the 49th Rifle will move back. We will instead bring up, which of these do we want? I think the 233rd, because they're in a slightly better supply situation. Okay. You know, you might as well move up towards the front. Okay. All right. We're getting ready. That is coming. Continuing down the line, I don't think we're going to do too much over here again because of the supply status. We did, in the last episode, take from the reserves and deploy, I think it was 3 railroad construction units. And my goal for those is that we can move them first down to Stalingrad to repair these rail lines, because this is the absolute priority. And then once they've done that, I'm hoping we can move them over to this region to begin rail repair. So it's going to take a while, but it will be worth it. And as we look at the situation over here, we see, right, that there's these blue lines. And I didn't talk about blue lines the first time I showed you this. Blue lines are the depot being supplied through naval transport, right? So this is a source of supply, that port is, that is supplying these 3 ports with supplies. And then this depot is supplying this depot here. I think, and hopefully that means that then this depot will start supplying these units even more quickly. All of that aside, I don't know that we're going to have a chance to go after the Crimea this turn. And it looks like they may have put in a stronger unit there, because I think this was what we were fighting previously. So that's not too good news. We might try to, as we did last time, see how close we can get to taking this port, Yisk. So I think I'm going to move some of these units up to do that. So they will kind of guard that north part. Here we'll move up just a little. Here we'll move up just a little. Right? You can almost call this scouting in force, right? We'll move you up, just in case we need to respond to anything. Okay. Yeah, so hopefully next turn then we can take this port, and hopefully that helps again with the supply situation. I do wonder though if maybe, this is something for me to research, maybe if we don't control both sides of this strait by the Crimea, which I can't think of the name of it, but if we can't control that, I'm wondering if ports on the Sea of Azov don't get port resupply, because they're saying, well, this is a conflicted strait, right? I don't know that for sure. But I think that about does it with our ground combat execution phase. What I do want to do next is highlight something else that we haven't talked about, and that is, and this is a UI improvement that I think a lot of players have loved, but I haven't picked up on it myself. it's important to make sure you don't have a unit selected before you do this, but you can right click on any hex and you get a menu, just like you would if you're operating in Microsoft Windows or a Microsoft Office product, right? And you can build a new airfield, a new depot, or a fortified unit in that hex. Those are the first three options, right? We can go over those at a later time, but for example, if we were managing our own depots instead of letting the AI do them, that would be a way that we can say, okay, you know what? I want to have a depot here in this hex. I'd right click and I'd click build depot, right? Then we have some more options where we can actually change the supply priority of this airbase, right? Because we clicked on a hex that has an airbase. We can say, what is the supply priority of that airbase? Right now it's set to 0. That's fine. We can also deploy right from our reserve a specific air operational group. So if we were manually managing our air directives and our air phase, this is the type of work that we would be doing. By letting the AI manage it, they will actually move air operational groups from the map, which is where we're playing here right now, to the reserve theater box. So it'll bring it to and from the reserve when needed. And then we can also center map something, which we're not going to do because we need to stay here. But perhaps the most useful is this map info, where you can get this quick little list of different things that you can have overlaid on the map. And it also tells you what the keyboard shortcut is for that. So we could look here and say, okay, show me what the ground weather is like. Now that applies the map for ground weather. Now we can take it off again. Right? Pretty simple stuff, but it's useful that it's all just a right click away. Then there's also info screens. So if you don't want to navigate up here, the info screens, I've seen some players that actually prefer to just right click on the map to get to something. So they can just right click and go to commander's report, right? And then they're there. Because I think some feedback that I've heard, I think it's valid, is the game really does focus your attention on the map, not necessarily this UI bar. And I find that the more and more I learn these different keyboard shortcuts, like N for the depots, I had them on, that's why I didn't see that. N for the depots or R for the railroads, right? The more that I learn those, the less and less I'm actually using this UI bar. So I think it's pretty valid that a quick and easy way then, if you don't want to mess with the UI bars, is to be able to right click and simply navigate to a particular map overlay or to a particular info screen. It also shows you the hex number and what whether or not it's the weather is clear, right? And there was one other one I wanted to tell you. Yeah, the hex name. We click in a hex 2, by the way. I don't know, we've talked about this, right? So you can see up here the actual city. You can click on it, see the city details. It's like we could assign an AA or construction unit to this city. And then we can choose which one we want to assign. Right, so if we had, and this is probably more relevant in, say, the 1941 Barbarossa campaign with the Soviets, where, you know, if you have factories that have not moved east of the Ural mountain range, and you want to try to protect them from, say, strategic bombing from the Germans, you might then go into those cities and build up AA units, right? And then it's also a quick shortcut to the air base if we wanted to look at that. And then over here, I think it's important to see, it also tells you the damage level of different aspects, right? So the city, its manpower, it's been reduced because of the occupation of German forces, etc. has been damaged, right? Think of this as reflecting like apartment buildings and houses being burnt and destroyed, scorched earth stuff. And then it also shows you rail yard, what the damage level is. So we could prioritize repair of that rail yard, and it would cost 1 AP, which we're not going to do because we don't actually care about that hex in any meaningful way right now. Perhaps in the future we will, and I'll live to regret that statement. I'm not sure. One one thing that happened when I was messing around with all of that is I actually think we lost on the map. We want to have, X's, which is E. There we go. Not sure how that had gotten off, but I find this is almost critical to have here to be able to see what hexes are the enemy. By the way, this color coding, the darker, say, gray or black indicates that in this turn, right, you flipped that hex. So another useful feature there. With that, I think it sums up the end of our ground phase and the end of a couple of those mechanics and features I just wanted to touch on briefly. So we're going to go ahead and click end this turn, and we're going to let end of turn operations go ahead and simulate. We're going to go through air resupply, then we're going to go through the AI's logistics phase, and then finally we'll get to see what do they do in their air and ground movement phases. I will be curious to see, since it looked like they had been doing some ground support with their Air Force, I'm curious to see if they do anything in the air execution phase. I was a little surprised to see that. I'm also curious to see how hard they push in the northern part of the front line near Leningrad, because it really does seem like that's their focus. You really do get this impression that because of the loss at Stalingrad, the encirclement of the Sixth Army, that the AI is kind of saying, hey, the key for us here is we need to take Leningrad, we need to keep them from advancing towards East Prussia and along the Baltic, and we need to focus on that. Let them have the Ukraine, right? We'll do a little bit of resistance, but we're not going to put up a big fight. That's the impression I'm getting from them. But I'll be curious to see how it actually all plays out. So here they're halfway through their logistics phase. So we haven't gotten to see anything exciting quite yet. And talked about this a few episodes ago. I have kept that map mode on, but truly more and more I find myself with the map weather overlay off, just because the game's map is so stunning, so excellent. A note that the developers did as well is there's actually kind of three tones of color, if you will, on each of these hexes that simulate whether or not the ground weather is just clear, regular, normal, right, muddy, or snow covered. And you'll see that shift when you're looking at these, like the hexes to the left in this German occupied territory here, they look a little more white, whereas because there's snow covering the ground, whereas say in July, right, they're going to look a little more green. And you can really notice that as you go across multiple seasons with the game. Yeah, so the Germans are actually executing some air directives, which I find a little curious, but so far it has sounded like it is just their recon groups that are executing. And it looks like, too, their air armies, their Luftwaffes, they're a little bit less strength and reinforced than ours were, right, where we had most of our air armies at 100%. And I'm really hoping that as the weather improves, we can use that to our advantage, really to have a bit of a air blitzkrieg, if you will. Yeah, so look at this. They have 83 Ju-52s and 24 Bf-109s escorting those supply runs. The supply situation has gotten much worse there in Stalingrad. You see all those units with red hexes. So now we're back up north by Leningrad. First counterattack we held, and then the second attack they made, we were pushed back. So, mixed result there. We held, this is down near Smolensk actually. Let's see if they do a second. They did, and we had 2 units rout and 1 retreat, so that's a little unfortunate. This is down by Orel. They pushed back our western front. We held, though, in the south next to Orel proper, so that's good news. Concerned to see the logistics icons that we have there next to some of those units and their current supply levels. I wonder, it looks like that might have been the extent of their counterattacks. So it looks like we suffered 3 defeats and we had 3 victories in terms of holding them. So really kind of mixed bag results there. I'm not going to lie, I'm not upset about it if that's kind of the ratio of wins to losses every time the Germans execute counterattacks. especially when you consider the victories that we're having in our ground phase, right? I'd say it's probably closer to a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 ratio in terms of our victories and the defenders holding when we're on the attack. So I think overall it's probably pretty good for us that things are playing out this way. I'd be much more concerned if they were actually so successful in their counterattacks in the first attempt on each hex that they're then able to break through and create a bit of a pocket. It doesn't seem like they've been capable of doing that, though. So here they're doing their last air resupply, should be over momentarily, and then we'll get a chance to go over the turn summary and news events and see where things stand before we jump into episode 20, which will be turn 11. It feels like we started this just yesterday, but it's been a blast going through all of this with you guys. And again, I have enjoyed this game so much. If you have not yet picked it up, I would highly commend it upon you to do so. I know with these Gary Grigsby games, the price tag is a little higher than what we may be used to nowadays with AAA, but the amount of work that's gone into it certainly meets the valuation that they have put on the game. We're going through our logistics phase right now, so this is where the AI is changing where the depots are located, the priority of depots, and these various steps. This is where the trucks are going those 300 miles one way to pick up canned goods to then drive back to the front line. Hopefully that's not too many situations, though. And if you remember, 3 turns ago, we were at 130, I think it was 134 low supply. Then we were at 120, and last turn we were at 138. So on the end of turn summary, the number one thing I'm going to be looking for is to see, did that 138 decrease? Did we improve our supply situation? And we did. Look at this. Our conservative attitude has worked out. I'm going to jump to the bottom here. Low supply units down to 90, right? So 48 units from the previous turn to this turn went from a low supply situation to a good supply situation. So that's very, very encouraging. Total friendly losses were down to 60,000 men. Again, I think that's another great improvement. We were actually seeing turn after turn of progressive increases to the point of where we hit 69,000 last turn. This turn we're just going to round, say 60,000, because it's pretty close to that number. We did lose 898 gun platforms. That's also down from the previous turn. 346 armored fighting vehicles, which is pretty flat to the previous turn. And we lost 50 airframes, which is pretty low considering how many turns we had hundreds of airframes being lost. Total net order of battle changes. We saw that we grew by 58,000 men, and the Germans lost 60,000, right? So that is a net swing of 120,000 men. That is very good news, and this number is really probably driven by the 2 units that we surrounded and had surrender in the last turn, turn 10, up near, not near Leningrad, but the Leningrad front area we've been calling it, and in Stalingrad. And their reinforcements were not able to cover those losses. Net changes, we were positive 1,200 gun platforms. They were net negative 774. We were negative 180 armored fighting vehicles. This is a trend that has not been getting better. Turn after turn, it has not gotten any better. Whereas the Germans, they grew theirs by 40. It was really their only area in which they had any growth. Airframes, we grew by 133 in the last turn, net change, and the Germans lost 104. And they had some operational losses with those sorties they ran, so that probably helped contribute to that. Already talked about the supply alerts. I am just going to real quick while we're here, I want to highlight this to see where those supply issues are happening. And I'm a little surprised to see this, that it does appear to be near the Smolensk and Leningrad fronts. I would have expected that more of these would have been down near the Caucasus front and Stalingrad. But I think this is reflective of the fact that, we haven't been advancing at the pace that we had previously, which means it is given time for these units to send trucks to the depot to send trucks to them, and to slowly start resupplying those units, right? Because your supply consumption goes down drastically, especially with motorized units, when you're not advancing 50 to 100 miles each turn. So I think that's some really good news, that we improved the supply situation there. The question is just going to be now that as we look at the real area of concern, what steps can we take to make this better, considering that this pocket right here, it's mostly due to the fact that this is all swampland, and that there is no real infrastructure in this pocket that I'm highlighting with my mouse. So that's probably the next area of concern then, is what decisions do we make on this front considering that? What's going to be difficult is, in the coming turns, is keeping a conservative attitude when you see things like this on the front line, where there's open road ahead of us, to borrow an expression right from the American culture of highways and freeways. Open road ahead of us here. So that's all good news. We'll turn off those highlights, and now we'll look at the news events. And only one news event, whereas previously we were having quite a few each turn. It's the Soviet partisans' activity, which continues behind the German front lines. So it's good news that that continues to happen. With that, we're going to call this episode to a close. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch the video and the series. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback for the video or the series, please add them in the comments section, and I will do my best to address them. If you can give the video or the playlists a like or a subscribe to the channel, it certainly helps get the name of the game out there and helps introduce newer players to the series to help them better understand how to play Gary Grigsby's War in the East too. All in all, thank you so much for watching, and have yourselves a great day, strategy gamers. Bye now.